Hey y'all, if you are a married believer trying to navigate this intimacy thing without shame, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because you are in the right place.
Teaching sex ed to adults is a lot like pushing water up a hill. Women
Yeah.
always go, "What's wrong with me?" There's nothing wrong with you. You're perfect. You go into the bedroom and your brain is like, "I'm not there. I'm not there. I'm not there. I'm not there." And then, suddenly it's just like a light switch. It just light switch goes on and you're just like, "Wow, I'm into it now." That's your delayed sexual response. There's a myth that women lose interest in sex. And I believe the opposite is true. Women become bored. I'll tell you my little game. I play I wonder how this is going to turn out game. I know that I need to put my body into the motions. And then suddenly it's just like, bam, I'm there. And it's like, oh, this is so much better than I thought it was going to be. Go in with you know, I I bet this might just turn out great. And
Yeah.
let's just find out. Partners want to know. Partners want this information. They're just so happy when you say to them, do this to me like this. They're like, I on it. I want this. They want this information. That's not just in the church. It's everywhere.
Welcome to the space where we tell our truth. Testimony, healing, breaking shame loose. Learning our bodies and walking by faith. Intimacy God's way, right here is the place. Sex ed for saints. Mondays at 6. We believe in the power of the story. Not just pain, but redemption and glory. Faith in the rhythm, hearts in the mix. Trust in educators. Mondays at 6. We're overcoming by the word of these testimonies. People getting free when we speak what's holy. Healing in our hearts, shame starts to split. Every story told, another chain gets stripped. Learning our bodies, learning His way. Intimacy and faith, walking day by day. This is where we heal, where the truth sticks. Sex ed for saints, Mondays at 6.
Quick pause in this lesson because I need to put you onto something that has been blessing so many households. This episode has been sponsored by Covenant Eyes, the accountability app that helps you protect your eyes, your mind, and your marriage. If you're serious about keeping your digital life pure, guarded, and God honoring, Covenant Eyes is a game changer. It helps you to stay accountable online and creates a safe space for your heart and your home. And listen, because you are a part of the Marriage Lab, you get 30 days free when you use my code Marriage Lab. So go ahead, take that step, cover your devices, and cover your covenant.
Another episode of the Sex Ed for Saints podcast. I'm so excited today, y'all. I am so excited. Every week I am excited actually because I have fantabulous guests. But today I have Dr. Trina on the stream. Hi, Dr. Trina.
Hi, Coach Tammy. I'm so thrilled to be here. It's an honor. Thank you.
Yes, yes. I'm so happy to have you. I love having, sexologists on the show because they bring so many gems. And, this conversation today, we are talking about mismatched libidos. And before we get into the episode, I do like to pull questions from the audience or questions from my viewers. And so if you ever have a question that you want answered on the podcast, you can always go to my Instagram page, the Marriage Lab LLC. You can click on the link in my bio and ask your questions anonymously, and we will answer them on the podcast, me and my guests. And so, the question that I got today was an interesting one. And the reason why I say that it's interesting is because usually, when there are, sex drives involved, usually it's the men who are, excited, right? The drives are a little bit different. But this question says that I'm embarrassed to ask this, but I want more sex than my husband most times, but he rejects me a lot. And honestly, I'm wondering if there is something wrong with me or if he's attracted to me anymore because we used to be like rabbits back in the day. So I love that question. I love that question. It's so common. It's so common. But Dr. Trina, you want to go ahead and comment on that?
Well, first of all, I think whenever women look at a problem, the first person she blames is herself.
Mm.
So I don't know this person or their situation, but I guarantee it's not you. It's not you. And please don't blame yourself. What I would recommend is that your husband go and get his testosterone checked. I don't know how old your husband is, but we talk a lot about women's hormones diminishing as we go into perimenopause and menopause, and there's big discussions about that. But what doesn't get discussed is men's testosterone drops significantly as well, and when that testosterone drops, his sex drive, libido, all that drops as well. So sometimes it's really about checking out his overall health, going to just getting a physical, because sometimes when other parts of the body are not working, the first thing to go on a man is his erection. And so it could be the testosterone, it could be that he isn't able to get an erection anymore, or isn't able to get an erection on demand because there's something else in his body that isn't well. Like, for example, the first sign of diabetes generally, or your person's going to have a stroke, or like there's something wrong with your body, is the erection goes. So if your husband's dealing with these things, he's probably too embarrassed to talk to you about them. And so go to your doctor and see what your options are. And once you're if this is the situation with your husband, chances are when you fix that, he is going to be back having sex like bunnies with you. And you
I
might be
love
going, "Oh my gosh, I created a monster. Oh no. Oh no. What was be careful what you wish for," right?
right. He's gonna be excited that he came back. He's gonna be excited. I think that that is some really good advice because you gave something very practical. Because it could be a health issue, and a lot of times we don't really think about that. That men don't really like to talk about what's going on with their bodies, for whatever reason. And so I think that that's some beautiful advice. Um, you have
And
something?
and and
Mhm.
also, like, there's a tremendous amount of shame when men can't get an erection, or, is half erect, or, like that. Like, it's just so much shame around that, and men don't know. A lot of men, not all men, but a lot of men don't know how to articulate that. So, this is a moment to, be very compassionate, and that compassion will bring you together,
Yeah.
and that's what's going to create happy sex, right? Like that vulnerability of communicating with each other, that's what the juicy sex comes from.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely love that. See, you are already dropping all the gems, all the gems. I really don't even have anything to add to that because we're gonna get into so much in this episode. And first, before we do though, I want you to tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So I'm Dr. Trina Read. I'm a Canadian sexologist. So meaning I'll have to apologize at least 10 times during this podcast because that's what we do. I help women in long-term relationships thrive after the honeymoon stage is over. I've been doing this for 25 years. I am a best-selling, award-winning uh, speaker and also author. So I have 3 books out right now, and they're all about helping women just learn to ask for the sex she wants in bed, and then lean into the pleasure that she asked for. So I would say the biggest thing that stops women from having the kind of sex life that she wants is she is unable to ask for it. And then if she does ask for it, she's unable to really lean into that pleasure. So these are things that women can easily get over, but women first have to know what to do and how to do it.
Before we talk about, mismatched libidos or anything like that, I want to talk a little bit about who you were before you became a therapist.
Well, when so I'm 57, and when I started out in university, I'm from the middle of Canada, from a place called Regina, and yes, Regina rhymes with vagina, so it was destiny. But I'm from a place called Regina, and I went to university there, and there was no such thing as a sex therapist or a sexologist. That was all new. So, my my choices were limited, and I went into business. So I got a business degree. I actually have 2 undergraduate degrees, and I went into the corporate world for 10 years and just really wasn't a good fit, right? And just at that, 10 years later, this idea of sex started putting, like, coming out into the world. And it was very serendipitous. I wish I had a better story, but essentially, I was on a dog walk with this really cute guy, and we were talking about sex, as you do with really cute guys. And he looked over at me and he said, you should really be teaching this stuff. And I looked at him and I said, you're right. And it was just like that. Oh, you know what? It just makes so much sense.
That's so
And so
interesting.
I quit my job. Honestly, I quit my job. Don't do that. It was the dumbest thing, but I quit my job and I applied to a university that I had no business going to in California. I got a job that I had no business getting. Like, it was like everything just lined up,
Mhm.
and it was like, and then I have been on this journey through the roller coaster. Let me tell you, I don't know if you've encountered this, but teaching sex ed to adults is a lot like pushing water up a hill. It's like every day you get up. Like, I just got suspended from Facebook. If you go onto my Facebook, you'll see it's pretty vanilla. Like, there's not, it's not anything salacious. But I got suspended. And that's just the way, and you just roll with that because that's how it is in this industry. But yeah, so I've been doing this for 25 years, and I am passionate about teaching women about her pleasure and being an equal in her relationship, and how to be satisfied in her relationship. And that's what keeps me getting up every single morning.
Yeah, I love that because I love hearing stories about, how people got into this field. It's always so interesting because you can tell that you're very passionate about it. Because I was the same way. I was the same way. And trust me, I absolutely know about Facebook. I think my page got shut down like maybe 4 or 5 times. I was like, I'm moving it to another platform. I'm just moving it to another platform because it's just too much.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, you can't. So, like, they say sex sells, but honestly, like, I can't. I've got these books, and I can't advertise on Amazon. I can't advertise on Facebook. Anyways, that's for another podcast.
right,
But
right,
I'm
right.
but I'm trying, ladies. I'm trying. I'm trying to
Mhm.
get you.
Yeah, yeah. The algorithm is just really not on our side, so we just have to be creative
Yeah.
in how we approach. So let me ask, like, was there a moment or a pattern you kept seeing in couples that you realized, like, oh, this is so much deeper than sex when you got into that field?
Yeah. So I would say that it's not about the sex at all. It's about the feelings that we attach to sex. So
Mhm.
sex is a neutral thing. Sex isn't good, it's not bad, it's just neutral. But uh something I noticed over and over and over again is people attach their feelings onto the initiation of sex. So if you think about, when sex is initiated, uh, there's an immediate response. And generally, if you're in a place where you don't necessarily want to have sex, you associate that initiation with negative feelings, right? So all of a sudden, resentment and anger and all these things are attached to this initiation of sex. So it has nothing to do with the sex, it
Mhm.
has everything to do with your unresolved feelings that you haven't been able to communicate to your partner outside the bedroom, right? And as soon as you start, setting your boundaries and, communicating better, like, once you put these things into place,
Mhm.
suddenly sex is so much easier to have and it's so much better. So this is something that I've seen in thousands of women where they're attaching all these negative things that are she's feeling that because of situations that are happening outside of the bedroom to the act of sex. And so
Yeah.
it's really downplaying. It's like a black tar
Mhm.
over her desire and arousal, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, just like the anonymous question, she immediately started feeling rejected. I really wish that we could do these lives so I could kind of get more information from the person who's asking. But generally, she started expressing her feelings. It went immediately to something's wrong with me. And so that's
Something's wrong with me. That's always, women always go, what's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you. You're perfect.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But research does show that 80% of people who are having, well, 80% of individuals or couples are having mismatched libidos. And so let's define exactly what that is. Like, what is mismatched libido?
It is what it sounds like. One person in the couple wants sex more often than the other person in the couple. So let's say one person in the couple wants sex 3 times a week, and the other person in the couple wants it once every couple months. We've got these two different people, and so they're both unhappy because the person who wants sex more often is like, they're obviously their needs are not being met. But the person who's does want sex less, they often feel a lot of guilt and shame and resentment because, there's that thing always hanging over their heads that, you know, so, uh, so the thing is, I would say with mismatched libidos, there's a lot of things going on, and it's about taking a step back and being a detective to find the underlying issue that's actually happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And I absolutely love that. And when you say like find the underlining issue, because I know that, before it shows up even physically, it shows up emotionally. So what does that kind of look like from your perspective?
So sex, something that doesn't get talked about, is sex is an evolution. So
Mm.
just like as you evolve as a human being and you evolve with another person, you're changing, your relationship is changing, and people often assume that sex just stays static, but it's not. That your sex is also evolving. So the sex you want in your 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and beyond is different. So I would just say that it's really, I mean, the most common thing. It happens to every single couple that you will have times in your relationship where one person wants sex and one person does not want sex. And it can, it's just a matter of fact. It's going to happen to every single relationship. So I think we need to normalize this idea of sometimes in a relationship, it's going to be sexless. Sometimes you're going to feel asexual. You're not going to feel like having sex. Sometimes you're going to feel like having a lot of sex. And the thing is, when you're partnered with somebody else, they're on their own trajectory, right? So like, it's not that you're never going to be like flowing together at the same momentum, right? There's always going to be some disparity. So I think, and the first thing is to stop seeing sex as a static, we need to have sex X amount of times. Let's just say, for example, once a week. Okay, let's just use that as an example. So, like for the rest of your relationship, you're going to have sex once a week. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong. I remember with the COVID lockdowns, I had my whole family back like everybody else. My whole family was in the house. My libido just flatlined, like for a lot,
Mhm.
because of the stress like I just had zero desire. But the thing is, I knew in that moment it was a season of my life. It was something I would get over eventually. And I think sometimes when we're in these seasons of life where we don't want to have sex or we feel asexual or we feel sexless or we don't want sex as much as of our partner, we blame ourselves. And we think that that's the end. it's not the end. It's just a little blip on the radar, right? So the whole thing is you have to, like, as a couple, you have to come together and start discussing that, your sex life is an evolution. And, sometimes there's going to be great times and sometimes there's going to be not so great times. And this is part of being in a relationship.
Yeah, yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Because your desires are not going to match all the time because so many different things are going on in life. Period. And you mentioned frequently stress, right? I want to touch on that a little bit because stress does play a huge role. How often is it connected to stress rather than something as simple as like I'm not feeling attractive or something like that?
So when so the stress hormone cortisol,
Mhm.
when you are producing cortisol, you cannot produce um, oxytocin and the other hormones that help you feel desire and arousal. So it's like you have one or the other. You've got stress or you've got desire, right? So the more stress you have, and I'm sure you've talked about stress a lot on your podcast, but it's virtually impossible to feel really sexy and juicy and all that when you're too stressed out. So it's I would say that when if you're in a season of life, being a mom, if you're working and you're being a mom and you're doing all, hob your volunteer activities, like when you've got that much of a life going on, chances are you've got a lot of stress going on with it as well. And, you know, having sex can seem like just another thing added onto your stress level. And my podcast partner, her name is Amy Rowan, and she does a beautiful job of explaining how sex should be something that releases stress,
Mhm.
that it gives you pleasure and it should be something that help you and your partner lean into to help take the stress away. And it took, being an uptight whitey Canadian, it took me a moment to like wrap my head around that one because like I'm a type A personality and I'm like, okay, so sex is supposed to de-stress me. And but I she's right, like if you can just lean into the touch and all the good feels and start releasing that oxytocin, like suddenly sex is something that is nurturing and calming and an oasis to a really hectic and stressful life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And early on in my marriage, because I got married very quickly and I started having children very quickly, and I had two boys back to back.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm
Wow.
talking about one
Wow.
was born in 2018, the next was born in 2019. Like it was like back to back. And so my body was going through a lot of different changes. And prior to, obviously, we were getting it in, right? But after I started having, babies and my hormones just started going all over the place and it just became postpartum and all the things. And my desire, like it just went crazy. And there was still this need like, oh, I want to, but I can't. Like I'm not even available to be able to do it. And so I definitely understand the stress. That's why I teach it. Because it is, your body goes through things. But let's talk a little bit about that because during those times there are a lot of emotions going on and your body holds the emotions. So let's talk about how that happens or what that does to the body.
Well, it's interesting because your body tells you what's happening long before your brain does. And so if you're not feeling secure or safe in your relationship, if you're not feeling nurtured or taken care of or supported, your body's going to tell you this, and it's going to, not reject, but you're going to not feel the. So sometimes when we're in this state, we tend to lock up when our partner touches us. We tend to lock up and freeze, and we just, and we and our bodies are not just not only not enjoying the touch, but we're like almost rejecting the touch. And I feel like if you don't feel safe or secure or nurtured or supported in your relationship, it's going to show up on your body, and that, that's outside the bedroom. And so when you're inside of the bedroom, chances are you will absolutely not be able to, feel aroused and lean into your pleasure. And, sex becomes performative. Does that make sense? Like, it's not about your pleasure, it's about performing in order to satisfy what you think your partner wants to hear, right? Which sets up a whole lot of more negative things for you to feel resentment in the bedroom. But yes, you're absolutely correct. I think, especially when you have little ones and you're completely touched out, and you just need some nurturing, and you just need somebody to take care of you because you're busy taking care of these little ones. Your body says it all without your brain really understanding that
Yeah.
it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. Your body, it really does start to prioritize those biological needs first. And so for me, that's what it was. And a lot of people who I, have conversations with as well. So yeah, like your body, if it's tired, it's not gonna want to have sex. If you are hungry, if you are thirsty, like all of these things, it prioritizes the needs first. So yeah, I definitely understand that. Definitely understand it. And I want to talk about, because you mentioned it, um, that if you're not feeling safe or, loved or all these different things, we go through conflict with our spouses. And so, like, how does unresolved conflict show up sexually?
Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
Well, so I read something and I wasn't able to cite the research. So I don't know if this, do you know what I'm saying? Like, it seems to be true, but I don't have the research to back this up. And that is, uh, a lot of women, they get into a fight with their partner. And then, 10 days later, if it comes back up again, she feels the same amount of emotion that she felt when she was fighting with a partner. If it's 2 years later, she felt the same amount of emotion that she felt just at that time. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So if you have a particularly big, huge fight with your partner and there's been no resolution to it, and it might have to do with sex and it might have to do with money, but if your partner, if you've had that and all of a sudden it comes back to you, uh, y- you are not going to want to have sex. I just, the thing is, uh, I understand that sometimes when you're going day to day with your partner and they don't, let's say they don't pick up their clothes, or they don't put the cap on the toothpaste, and or maybe they don't put their dish away or into the dishwasher. Like, these are such small things that you do not want to start a fight about it. You don't want to bring up the issue, because it's just going to start a fight, and you don't have the energy and you don't have the will to take that to the end. I get it. And when we don't deal with these small things and start setting boundaries in the moment, it's going to show up in the bedroom. It's going
Mhm.
to show up as when your partner sex is initiated, and all of a sudden you're like, you did not put the cap on the toothpaste, you did not put your glass away, your jeans are still on the floor. Like, these are, yeah, and like, I don't know about you, but these are the things I'm thinking about. I'm not thinking about sex, I'm
Mhm.
thinking about, you know the things that I'm angry about because I didn't resolve them with my husband.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is 1000% true. These small little things, they might be small, but they add up, they pile up. And when you don't deal with them, it shows up later. So
It creates like the every time, and I get it. It's exhausting because, not only like women are expected to set boundaries and we're like supposed to nurture the relationship and like we've got all these other things and it just seems like, come on, one more thing. But when it's it's not that difficult to start
mhm,
setting a boundary. It's not.
yeah,
It is tricky to start a conversation. I get it, but once you open up that line of communication, it just gets easier and easier. Compare that with just sweeping the things under the rug and sweeping, one more thing under the rug. And soon you have this big bump in the rug that you're
mhm,
tripping over every single time you walk into having sex, right? It's
mhm,
not worth it. It's just not worth it. So, I advocate strongly for women just to, in the moment where you just are like, oh, I don't want to deal with the toothpaste cap. It's just too small of an issue. It's not.
yeah,
It's really not. It's a big issue, and you need to start, saying what you need to say in order
yeah.
for you to feel safe in this and supported in this relationship.
Yeah, and I love that because a lot of times safety isn't there because you're not speaking up about what it is that you do need. And so to help women advocate for themselves, to say, no, I need you to say even the small things, it's helping them, build that voice for themselves so that they can keep those lines of safetyness open, right? If that makes sense. So yeah,
Yes.
I love that. I love that. And even speaking with that, when it comes to, past trauma or even, non-sexual trauma, how does that influence desire?
So the thing is, if you have issues that lean into trauma, a lot of people just want to try and fix it themselves. And, you are very smart, you're very capable, you're all of these things, but you're not a licensed professional. So, if you or your partner have benefits and you can manage to go see a counselor or a therapist to help start working through these issues, that seeing a therapist is your most time efficient, economically efficient, mentally efficient way to start dealing with past trauma and move through it. And then you can start better connecting with your partner. So, I would, you know, I get that there's a lot of shame and, and also, these trained professionals, that's their job and they've heard a lot of things and they won't be shocked
Mhm.
or any with what has happened to you. They're going to be there supporting you and helping you move through this so you don't have to deal with it anymore. It's gone, it's in the
Yeah.
rear view mirror, right? Sayonara, good
Yeah, yeah,
riddance.
yeah. I love that. I love that. I don't even think there's an episode that I've done where I'm like go and see a therapist or go and speak to somebody about the issue that you have going on because it's absolutely necessary. And there are too many people who do not like to get help for the things that they have going on. And a lot of my community is faith based, and when it comes to intimacy, they just won't. They'll
Mhm.
go to the pastor for everything that they need except for what they need sexually. And I think that that's a huge problem. And I want to touch on that a little bit because, how does religious or, purity based messages shape sexual responses, later in life?
Well, I would say, this is a really interesting topic because I would say society in general, like the whole society in general, puts a big shame blanket on women. And a lot of times religion gets blamed for it. I'm not saying religion is perfect. It's not. It has its own stigmas. But I would say that in or out of religion, uh, there's a lot of purity language for women. Like, women are supposed to like sex, but they can't like sex too much. So what's the right amount? You tell me, Coach Tammy, how much is the right amount for a woman to like sex so that she doesn't feel shame around it? I would just say that it's this idea of shaming women into silence is not just within the faith-based community. It's everywhere. And so, I have been at this for 25 years, and I am sometimes I think with social media, it's almost worse because
Mhm.
I think young ladies are really objectifying themselves on, just to get attention. Like, so it's not, so but I hope I'm making my point clear, but I don't think this is a faith-based thing. I think it's a society thing
Yeah.
where women are silenced to, and just to give an example. So I have done over 1,000 interviews all over the world. And my experience of doing this is I can talk about anything sex negative. I can talk about how sex is difficult, how, couples don't have sex, how, I can talk about sexual assault or sexual trauma. I can talk about anything that's sex negative on Facebook, on everything. But the moment I start talking about female sexual pleasure,
Mhm.
I get censored. I
Mhm.
get censored. So it just says to me that the overall arc of messaging to women is they hear the negative, they can feel the shame, they can feel the guilt. That's okay. But the moment somebody's advocating for her pleasure, it's censored.
Yeah.
And that's not just in the church. It's everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think that's so interesting, because in my book, I spoke a little bit about that. Just when we're even talking about the clitoris, right? And, the discovery of the clitoris and how long it took for, them to even add it to the medical journal, right? And so, like, even something as simple as that, like, females' bodies were being ignored for years, and they had doctors, coming with culture to try to, tame women, like it goes way back. And I think that's so interesting. Because it all works together, essentially.
Absolutely. So in 19, I think it was 1905. So
Mhm.
that's well over 100 years ago.
Mhm.
A sex educator by the name of Mary Cauldron from the US, she talked about a donut hole sensibility, meaning women have like where her private area is. It's almost like a donut hole. So she just ignores it. She pretends it's not there. She doesn't talk about it. So here we are in 2026, and I would say the majority of women still have a donut hole sensibility
Mhm.
to her private area.
Mhm.
So, including the clitoris. So, I'm just saying, like, even though things have changed significantly, they have not changed.
Yeah. Yeah. And that contributes to, how you feel about your body. And when you get married, it also contributes to how you feel about yourself.
Well, education is power, right? So if you don't understand your body and you don't understand how your body works or what you want from your body, you certainly cannot tell your partner. And if your partner doesn't know, so here's the thing. My experience is partners want to know. Partners want this information. They're just so happy when you say to them, do this to me like this. They're like, I on it. I want this, they want this information. And, if you don't understand your own body and you have
Mhm.
that donut hole sensibility, your partner's going to do their best, but it's not your partner's job to please you. That's not their job. It
Mhm.
is your job to tell them what you want and like.
Yeah, yeah. And again, that contributes to um the libido issues that you have because you don't know what you want. And so a lot of times when you don't know what you want, it means that you're probably not having the sex that you desire. And so let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this is something I'm very passionate about, and that is, there's a myth that women lose interest in sex. And I believe the opposite is true, and that sex is not interesting and women become bored and sometimes become apathetic with the sex that she's expected to have. So, you know, what society says is good sex, which is typically for a heterosexual couple, as you walk into the bedroom, you give each other an orgasm and then you're done. And that's supposed to satiate your needs.
Mhm.
But for women, that model of that way and model of having sex. It works for a year or two, but then if she starts doing that over and over and over and over again, she just starts to get bored. And if she doesn't know how to explain to her partner that she wants something different, and she feels resentment because sex is really about making sure her partner is pleased, not herself. It just becomes like something that it's about her part. It she detaches from her will, want, and desire to have sex, if that makes sense.
So, because I think that's really interesting where you were going, right? But I also think when it comes to telling their spouses how they feel, you said something very interesting is that they won't, right? They'll just suffer through it. Why do you think it's difficult for a lot of women to tell their spouses what it is that they're feeling or what it is that they desire?
I would say outside the bedroom, when we look at women and across the board, not just with sex, but across the board, the majority of women just are unable to say what she wants. What do you want? Oh, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I want. So, this is especially true when it comes to her sexual experience. So, when I say to women, what do you want out of sex? Generally, she's going to say, I want a bigger, better orgasm. Like, show me how to do that, assuming that by having a bigger, better orgasm, it's going to jumpstart her libido. It's going to jumpstart her arousal. Suddenly, she's going to be more into the sex. But what I find women actually need from her sexual experience is the sensual part. The so inside and outside the bedroom. So there's two things that the majority of women are missing outside of the bedroom that fundamentally impact her ability to be connected inside the bedroom. Number one is women, the more emotionally connected a woman is with her partner outside the bedroom, the more she's going to feel connected to him inside the bedroom. So, you know, if we're going through our day and it's really busy, we just don't make a lot of efforts to make that emotional connection with our partner. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It can just be a hug and a kiss. It can be a, hey, you look really nice today. Like, it could just be you know, just connection points. And, Dr. Justin Lemire calls this erotic threads. So you're creating erotic threads outside the bedroom so that you start to simmer. You're simmering outside the bedroom. You're having that emotional connection. And suddenly, when it's time to have sex, because you're full and you're satiated and you feel safe and you feel all of these things, walking into the bedroom is so much more satisfying.
Mhm.
And the other thing that I think that the majority of couples, including myself, miss out on is, especially when we're in our long-term relationships, we forget to desire our partner.
Mhm.
So we don't show and tell our partner that we find them sexy. And when we're first in a relationship, one of the reasons sex is so easy and fun is there's a lot of desire going on. There's a lot of touching and a lot of, telling your partner how attractive you find them, and all of these things are, all of that is when you walk into the bedroom, you feel satiated. So I would say that if you are a female and you don't really have that emotional connection, and you don't really know that your partner desires you
Mhm.
when sex is initiated. A lot of time our partner gives us the signal, the signal. They like, like they grab something on you, and your body goes tense because it's time, but you just feel disconnected from this person, right? So when your partner desires you, and you have that erotic thread going through each day, suddenly when sex is initiated, it's definitely an easier segue into the bedroom.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Because I want to talk a little bit about initiation real quick because the truth is we all have different desires. So let's talk about, those sex drives, like responsive and spontaneous sex drives.
Yes. So the majority of women in long term relationships have what's called a delayed sexual response, meaning when sex is initiated, chances are you are not going to want sex in that moment. And the longer you've been with your partner, the longer your delayed response is. So, so you may have had the experience where, sex is initiated and you're like, I don't feel like sex. I don't feel like sex. So you start, you go into the bedroom, and your brain is like, I'm not there, I'm not there, I'm not there, I'm not there. And then, suddenly, it's just like a light switch. It just light switch goes on, and you're just like, wow, I'm into it now. That's your delayed sexual response. So the thing about a delayed sexual response is because you are unable to move from your brain and into your body, it's going to take a moment. This is where a lot of women just want to skip the foreplay. They're like, you know what? It's not going to happen for me tonight. It's not going to happen for me tonight. So let's just skip the foreplay. Let's just skip the me time and just get on to the main event. And I would say in this moment, even though you're in this, your arousal is catching up to your body's desire, what I would encourage you to do is to start putting your body into the motions of sex, because when you do that, it's going to be so much easier to shorten that delayed response. And by the way, when women have the emotional erotic thread connections and she has her partner desiring her, that delayed sexual response shortens significantly. So
Mhm.
that's why it works. So spontaneous desire is when you and your partner look at each other and you're like, it's time, you're able to walk into the bedroom and, just have sex. And you know, everybody wants to believe that sex is spontaneous, that we all have that spontaneous sexual desire. But the majority of women just don't. We have a delayed sexual response.
Mhm.
And I think it's not going away, and you can't make it stop. There's nothing you can do about this other than to, the game I play with myself, I'll tell you my little game is I play the, well, I wonder how this is going to turn out game, because, sometimes sex is great. Sex is always a lot of fun. But sometimes when I play the I wonder how this is going to turn out game, sex goes beyond my expectations because I know that I need to put my body into the motions. And then suddenly it's just like, bam, I'm there. And it's like, oh, this is so much better than I thought it was going to be, And so, instead of going in with a preconceived idea of, I don't feel like it. I don't really want it, but let's do it because it's been a week. And, if we don't, it's going to start a fight, all those conversations you're having at the start, go in with, well, you know, I, I bet this might just turn out great. And
Yeah.
let's just find out.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Because I think it's so important to understand, what kind of desire you have, or potentially always have, as well as knowing the practical tools to bring that gap in a little bit closer. So what you're basically saying is that, when you and your spouse do have mismatched libidos, that this is something that can be resolved over time.
I would just say yes. Like, I think probably every single couple who's been together for, more than 3 or 4 years will experience mismatched libidos. It's absolutely natural. And I just think that, communication is sexual communication is one of the hardest things that we can do. And as my colleague, Dr. Jessica O'Reilly says, conversations are awkward and you need to lean into the awkwardness of this conversation. And when you lean into the awkwardness, the next time you have a conversation, it gets a little bit easier. So, I would say, the first time you try and sit down and say, you know what, our sex is evolving, or whatever you want to say. I I think it's better to listen to a podcast like your podcast. Listen to this podcast together. This is a great conversation starter. You can send your partner an article that you read that, that says it's so much better than you could ever say it. And then sit down with your partner and have that conversation. There's a lot of ways to open up these ideas. And I would say that, and this seems like common sense, but a lot of times when we approach these conversations, we approach them like, you don't, I don't like,
Mhm.
instead you need to say, I love you. I want us to be happy. I want us to have a great sex life. And in order for us to have that, we can do these things, and I mean, that's a, that's a great jumping off point.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. In terms of like, tools that they can use, um, what do you think about marital aids and using those to help enhance libidos? So, like, bringing in toys or something like that.
I just came across this app. It's called Melba app, and it's a voice guided app. And I love this app because uh, it, you go onto the app and you type in your particulars, and you want what you and your partner are comfortable with, and then it gives you voice guided directions. So one partner wears headphones and listens to the voice guided directions, and the other person is lying there receiving, right? So if you don't know how to do a new technique, and I think what stops a lot of couples from trying new things is they just don't know how to do it, and you can't be reading a manual when you're in the bedroom, like you can't be doing that. So you have to memorize it ahead of time. You can't. So you can use the Melba app, and for example, you want to learn about, uh, you know, full body pleasure. I'm not sure what you're into, but it will take you through step by step how to do this to your partner, and then you can switch, and then the other partner's listening and doing this thing, and they only last for 10 to 50. These sessions only last for 10 to 15 minutes, and I think we all have 10 to 15 minutes to try something new on our partner. I think that's exciting.
Yeah, it absolutely is. What is that app again? I want to make sure.
It's okay. I'll spell it for you. It's Melba, Melba.
I love that. I love that.
Talk
I'm definitely gonna, research that one because that sounds very interesting and something that I can use to give my clients also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because intimacy is about having fun, and the more fun that you are having, the more you are feeling aligned as well. So,
I think so. I think with having different aids, as you say, what you're doing is you're just bringing something new into the bedroom. And they've done research to show that when you bring something new, anything new into the bedroom, it releases hormones similar to when you first got together with your partner. So you get that great zap of newness again. And that's why bringing ideas in, I just think that, again, it comes down to your ability to communicate with your partner. Let's say you just want to bring in a lubricant, like all, lube, all things are so much better with lube. Everything is better with lube. And like, it's a pretty innocuous thing to bring into your bedroom, but the whole, you have the bottle, then you have to like, do the bottle, and like, you have to like stop things and, get some, and then spread it on. Like, some people, that can be a lot, just doing that.
Yeah.
And I get it. But once you start bringing new ideas in, it gets easier.
Mhm.
And, and suddenly, sex is supposed to be playful. And, suddenly when you start feeling a lot more comfortable and at ease with bringing new ideas in, sex does become playful.
I love that. I love that. And thank you for mentioning lube because it always surprises me how many people just don't want to use it. I'm like, it can make everything so much better, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's really that simple, something as simple as lube. And they do have some that has like the re-wetting agent. So you don't even have to wait until the experience. Put it on before and it'll reactivate once it becomes wet again. Like there are loops that do that. So definitely try one of those if you feel like stopping in the moment is going to be an issue, right? So,
Yeah. I think it's a lot of, us just are really, sex is so serious. It's so serious. Like, we have to be serious. Sex is not serious. Sex is supposed to be fun. And, I understand loosening up and all of that. It is it's a learned skill that it's an evolution. And the more safe you
mhm.
feel with your partner, the easier that this is going to be. But I you know I I would just if you I would just take a look at your partnership and say, how serious is our sex, and how can we make it a little bit more fun if it is
Mhm.
a little too serious?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for saying that. Just how you said it. I love it. I love it. We have been on here talking for almost an hour
Oh,
because we can really be talking about this conversation all day. But what is one myth that you wish couples would stop believing about sex?
that it's orgasm based. Like, the only reason you're having sex is to have an orgasm. Like, orgasm is a small piece of the sex pie, and like, there's the rest of the pie, and that's where mind blowing sex lives.
Yeah, yeah, 1000%. They you can have good sex without having no orgasm. Really good sex.
You can have amazing sex
Mhm.
without having an
Yeah,
orgasm.
yeah. And I think that's also a myth too because, there's like the ego that's involved, or if she's not having an orgasm, I'm not doing my job, right? But I tell couples all the time, like, you don't have to have an orgasm to have really good sex. And it's not an ego thing, it's just a preference thing. What is it that you desire in that moment? So yeah. With that, is there anything that you would like to tell to someone who might be listening to this right now, who feels unwanted or pressured?
I would say it's time to take a step back and figure out what you want out of the sexual experience. Chances are, one of the reasons you might not be as interested in sex as you could be is there's nothing in the sexual experience that's satisfying you. So, if you were to turn this into something like, if you were to turn this around and make sex an enjoyable experience for you, what would that look like? And chances are it would be, a lot of touching, a lot of connection. There would be some talking. You would have those erotic threads, emotional connection outside the bedroom. You would say to your partner, if you want to have sex with me today, You have to work for it. You have to desire me. You have to show me. You have to like prove it to me, and, so I would say, it's not you. The sex you're having probably isn't that interesting, or it could become a lot more interesting, but it's up to you to tell your partner and yourself what it is that you want to have and how to make it interesting for you.
I love that. I love that. And y'all change locations sometimes.
Yeah, just go to the other side of the bed. Like, just the other side of the bed. That's it.
Because these little small things can make a huge difference. They really can. But thank you, Dr. Trina, for such a wonderful episode. You have dropped so many gems. I want people to be able to access you. Where can they find you?
So you can go to my website, trinaread.com. On all my socials, everything. I'm at Dr. Trina Read. Although my Facebook is suspended right now. So, you go today, you might not find me. But, and yeah, so I have on my website, I have a lot of freebies. So, how to be sexy checklist, your sex history checklist, the 5 pleasure secrets of satisfied couples, so there's all these freebies for you to just start getting into your body, start learning how to what you want, like what your needs are, and start opening that side of you up.
I love that. And earlier you mentioned that you had a couple of books that you have. You want to talk a little bit about those real quick?
Sure. So I have a book coming out February 28th. It's called The Taboo Show, and it's about 4 women who walk into the taboo sex show and walk out forever changed. So the books I've written are the world's first genre bending self-help fiction. So I decided to take sex ed and put it into a fiction book. So my first book is The Sex Course. And, it's really about talking to women about sex ed in a fiction way. And it's really fun because, uh, it, it's, I'm used to giving information. So here's the information about having a better sex life. But the fiction book is about how the women are receiving that information and what they're doing with it. And I thought that was, it's just really interesting. And a complimentary workbook that I have for these 2 fiction books is my workbook, You Me Bed Now. And it's a 5-step program on how women can start asking for what she wants. So it's, why do you have sex? What stops you from having good sex? What do you want out of the sexual experience? How to ask for what you want, and then how to lean into the pleasure that you asked for. All 5 of these steps are things that stop women from experiencing the sex that she deserves. So, it's, and both these books are award winners. And yeah, so I just have to drop that into every conversation. Yeah, so I just would say that if you want to start this journey of understanding your needs and how to ask for them, and you're at the starting point, then these books are a great way to start having that voice, articulating, starting to understand and articulate to your partner what that is and how to do it.
I love that. I love that. And thank you for mentioning that because they sound really good. I think I want to get that 5 book. Yes, definitely. Definitely want to get that. But thank you again for the conversation that we just had on the Sex Ed for Saints podcast. Let me tell you, there were so many gems dropped. Was there anything that you wanted to say that I did not ask?
I would just say that, you know, as a couple goes along, their sex life can become better and bigger and more juicy and more fulfilling. So there's this idea that the longer you've been together, the more narrow your sex gets. And I would say, you know, it doesn't take a lot of effort for the two of you to start having the most mind-blowing sex ever. And you know, it's not that difficult, and it just takes a few little tweaks here and there, and suddenly, this idea of mismatched libidos is gone, and you two are like, you're having the best sex of your life wherever you are in your relationship.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So yes, y'all have heard it from Dr. Reed. Listen, you are not broken. Your spouse is not broken. And this is not the end of your intimacy story. It's something that is not simple, but it does happen frequently. But there are resolutions and tools and things that you can use to make sure that it's better. And so I do thank you, Dr. Trina, again for the conversation. Thank you for showing up on the pod. And until next time, guys, just tune in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this episode. Thank you again. Bye.
Hey, y'all. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Now, friends, if this conversation blessed you, do me a favor. Take a moment to like, leave a review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, because you already know we need more faith filled, real conversations like this in the world. And listen, I know you heard a gem today, something that made you pause, something that made you think, something that made you say, woo, this was for me. But friend, it might not be just for you. So go ahead and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Send it to a friend, a spouse, a sister in Christ, somebody who's been feeling stuck or silent in this area. Let's spread healing, freedom, and truth one conversation at a time. And until next time, we're going to get candid, but keep it God. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.